What if you were told that within the next 100 years, the entire world as we know it today will end? That the US, China, Europe, India, Russia, Japan, everyone will be completely wiped off the map. Well, believe it or not, this isn't science fiction. It already happened once before. This was the Bronze Age collapse. And if it happened again today, here's how it might look.
Ow.
Almost around 1200 BCE, most of the major civilizations in the world went extinct. Egypt, the Hittites, Mycenaean Greece, the New Kingdom of Babylon, the Kassite Empire, the Mitanni, the Ahiawa, the Kikuyu, and dozens of others either vanished or were greatly weakened. Even the legendary city of Troy was destroyed in a massive earthquake in 1180 BC, and yet the old kingdom of Egypt continued to exist until 664 BC, nearly 350 years later. This is one of the longest-lasting civilizations in history. So why did it last so long? Well, it turns out that there were three major factors which caused the collapse. First, there was a devastating drought in the Near East and Eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BCE. Second, there were earthquakes in the same region. And third, there were migrations by foreign invaders. We know about these because there is archaeological evidence for them, mainly in the form of destruction layers in cities such as Ugarit, which show us that something really big happened there in the 12th century BC. There is also written records from the Egyptians which tell us about the mysterious sea people who threatened their empire. The drought lasted for several decades and was caused by a volcanic eruption in modern-day Iceland, which released a large amount of sulfur into the atmosphere. This blocked out the sun and caused temperatures to fall as much as 7 degrees Celsius lower than normal. This led to widespread crop failure and famine throughout the Near East and North Africa. You see, back then, Egyptian agriculture relied on annual flooding from the Nile River to water their crops. But during the drought, the river's flow decreased drastically, resulting in less farmland and more famine. But wait, there's more. The drought coincided with two earthquakes that struck the eastern Mediterranean. One in 1220 BCE and the other in 1180 BCE. These quakes destroyed major cities such as Troy and badly damaged places like Ugarit, which was Egypt's main trading post in the Levant. These natural disasters created political instability throughout the region and led to the collapse of the late Bronze Age world. Period of history characterized by the use of bronze implements, tools, and weapons. This Bronze Age ended about 4,000 years ago, and with it, so did the great empires of the East. Did you know that 80% of the world's population back then lived in small farming villages and were pretty much unaffected by all this? The collapse only hit the big cities hard, which eventually led to what archaeologists call the Iron Age, named after the material used by the smaller, independent societies in place of bronze. In fact, the collapse turned out to be a blessing in disguise for the average person living in those times. That's because as the great empires collapsed, people in rural areas enjoyed a better quality of life, more land, and more resources. It was like going from living in a big polluted city to moving to a quieter, greener suburb. But let's get back to Britain. As the world around them imploded, the British tribes were relatively untouched. It was as if they were living in their own little bubble of Bronze Age bliss, while the rest of Europe descended into chaos. But the collapse didn't pass them by unscathed. Eventually, it disrupted their society in ways both big and small. For example, writing disappeared from Britain around this time. Before the collapse, the British tribes had been exposed to the Phoenician alphabet through their interactions with the mainland Europeans. They adopted it, adapted it, and developed it into a script they used to record their language. However, after the collapse, that contact ceased, and with it, the script was forgotten. Funnily enough, this writing system was deciphered only a few years ago in 2022. Scholars had nicknamed it Vragesberg, after the place in Germany where it was first discovered. But there's a twist. Script may have been native British, or perhaps it was brought to the British Isles by continental Europeans who fled the chaos of the collapsing Bronze Age world. This script wasn't the only thing that the British picked up from their mainland neighbors. When the great empires of the Bronze Age fell apart, a lot of people packed up and left the sinking ship. Some headed south to escape the cold, while others moved west to find new homes. Among them were some skilled craftsmen who brought with them techniques and styles from elsewhere in Europe. For instance, pottery styles from the continent started appearing in Britain around this time. Meanwhile, the British started making their own versions of continental artwork, such as the famous ringleader cups, decorated with intricate geometric patterns. This fusion of styles reflects a cultural exchange between Britain and mainland Europe as people move back and forth between the two regions. It's like when immigrants bring a taste of their homeland to a new country and blend it with the local culture, creating something totally new and unique. But this cultural exchange wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. On top of the influx of new people came new diseases. And unfortunately, the British weren't prepared to fight them off. Back then, most people died from infectious diseases such as tuberculosis and smallpox. And as new groups mixed with the British, they brought along new germs that the British had never seen before. It's like when you go to school and pick up a cold from your classmates. But unlike your classmates, these new diseases were deadly. In fact, studies show that during the Bronze Age collapse, life expectancy in Britain dropped by a whole decade. From around 33 years to just 23, it's like going from retirement age to getting knocked out in the first round. Talk about a rough landing. The good news is that after the collapse, things slowly started to get better. People gradually recovered from the diseases, and life expectancy went back up to pre-collapse levels. By the late Iron Age, it even surpassed the Bronze Age peak, reaching an incredible 40 years. To put that in perspective, it was longer than the average lifespan in modern-day Afghanistan, Libya, and Nigeria. But wait, there's more. Another study suggests that the Bronze Age collapse actually helped spread new technologies and ideas in Britain, not just bad stuff like diseases. Before the collapse, most of Britain was still using bronze tools and weapons, because they were expensive and hard to replace. But after the collapse, when bronze production declined, people started experimenting with iron, which was cheaper, stronger, and more readily available. This innovation eventually led to the Iron Age in Britain around 700 BC, a period of history characterized by the widespread use of iron. In fact, the British took full advantage of the situation. Unlike the rest of Europe, who regressed into smaller, weaker states, the British used the new technology to expand their territory. One example of this was the rise of the Aderbates tribe, one of the most powerful groups in Britain during the Iron Age. They used their dominance to establish trade networks throughout the island and beyond, including with Gaul, Italy, and even North Africa. Their leader, Commius, even became a client king of Rome after Julius Caesar invaded Britain in 55 and 54 BC. Another example was the Parisii tribe, who dominated southern England in the 4th century BC. They were known for their wealth, its power, and love of luxury, thanks in part to their control of key trade routes. Under their king Commius, they waged war against the Roman province of Gallia Narbonensis and successfully raided it for over 40 years. So as you can see, the Bronze Age collapse affected Britain in more ways than one. It brought challenges like diseases and cultural upheaval, but it also created opportunities for growth and change. From the introduction of new technologies to the rise of new kingdoms, the collapse left a lasting impact on British history. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always room for hope and resilience. Now check out Ancient Rome vs. Modern New York, or click this other video instead.